Hello and welcome to SCOMathon 2026. My name's Graham Davies and I'm a technical product manager here at Squared Up and also responsible for community events, as my background has very much been with the SCOM community as a cloud and data center MVP for 5 years prior to joining Microsoft as a premier field engineer. I'm really excited to announce that SCOMathon 2026 is here, and we have more sessions and more attendee registrations than last year, and as to be expected, an ever-increasing focus on AI. And that's where I want to start this keynote. In The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, we're told the answer to life, the universe, and everything is 42. The problem was that nobody actually knew the question. Douglas Adams later joked that the maths was fundamentally flawed and that maybe the question was actually, what do you get if you multiply 6 by 9? The maths didn't line up, but we loved it anyway. I think about that when I think about the history of the community, our SCOM community. We're here to celebrate in a way 25 years of MOM 2000, a product that, in a very Douglas Adams sort of way, didn't actually exist until 2001. Microsoft did admittedly make up for being a year late with MOM 2000 by releasing MOM 2005 a year early. Yeah, the numbers never did quite add up, but here we are, over 2 decades later, and the fact that we're all in this virtual room today, that SCOMathon exists, that this community exists, is honestly one of the more remarkable things I've experienced in my IT career. In fact, it's pretty much spanned my IT career. So, where did it all come from? Operations Manager didn't spring fully formed from Microsoft's mind. The lineage goes back to a British software company called Serverware Group, acquired by Mission Critical Software, who rewrote it entirely and then merged with NetIQ. I was a consultant at NetIQ at the time, at the end of the last century, and that was my first experience of Operations Manager. I never for a moment thought I'd be here over 25 years later, introducing SCOMathon 2026. But back to our timeline. NetIQ sold the rights to Microsoft in October 2000, and Microsoft shipped it the following summer as MOM 2000, then MOM 2005. Then in 2007, the name we all know and love, System Center Operations Manager, SCOM. Shaped by a British startup, an American software company, a merger, an acquisition, and 25 years of enterprise monitoring evolution. But the product itself didn't evolve in a vacuum. It evolved alongside a community. And that community, this community, is just as much part of that story. Think about who was in the room in 2001. A small number of enterprise IT administrators figuring out how to make this new Microsoft monitoring product do what they needed. Sharing knowledge in forums, in news groups, in corridors at conferences. Building management packs. Writing documentation that didn't yet exist. Figuring it out together. SCOMathon is the most visible expression of that spirit. A team of experts, people with day jobs, clients, families, and pressures of their own, choosing to show up and share, to give back to a community that gave them everything. The community has evolved just as SCOM has evolved, shifting with the technology through cloud, hybrid, SCOM managed instance, AI integration. And I find it amazing that SCOMathon 2026 actually has more speakers and more registered attendees than SCOM 2025. Despite the rapid changes in our industry, SCOM still has a place for many organisations. Today we'll hear a lot about AI and how it will impact us. Interestingly, now we have some sort of research that shows exactly what's at stake. Researchers from Harvard and MIT have tracked how consultants at Boston Consulting Group use generative AI, and 3 patterns emerged. The first one they called centaurs. This made up about 14% of consultants, and these used AI in precise, targeted ways, bringing their own expertise and directing the tool deliberately. They increased or significantly increased their domain expertise and outperformed everybody else. The next group were called cyborgs, and they accounted for 60% of the consultants. These cyborgs collaborated with AI constantly in a conversational back and forth manner. They built AI fluency, itself a valuable skill, but surprisingly they gained little new domain expertise. The final group were called self-automators, and this accounted for a surprisingly high proportion, 27% of the consultants. The self-automators handed entire tasks to the AI and accepted whatever came back. Their output was quick, it was polished, and it was equally shallow. They built no skills at all. The conclusion? AI doesn't automatically make people better, it just amplifies how they work. And if you engage with it as a self-automator, you end up with a workforce that's fast but shallow. Got a quote here from Richard Feynman, and he wrote about something remarkably similar, albeit in a very different era, but it's about the same underlying failures. He called it cargo cult software science, engineers who copy the form of good practice without understanding why it works. Bamboo headphones, fires along the runway, waiting for planes to land. They're doing everything right. The form is perfect. It looks exactly the way it should, but for some reason it doesn't work. And they have no idea why, because they never built the understanding underneath. They never built the foundation. The self-automator is today's cargo cult engineer. The alert resolves, the plane lands, they move on. They don't know why it worked, and next time the runway looks even slightly different, they're lost. The conclusion, to be blunt, the debate shouldn't be about which tools or which processes to use. It should be about competence versus incompetence. Build the competence first. It might be slow and it might be messy, but eventually everything else follows that. And in the Scrum world, when something breaks in a way that AI hasn't seen before, and it will, the centaur knows where to look. The cargo cult engineer, the self-automator, is standing on the runway, wondering why the planes stopped coming. So what does this mean for how we should be working with AI? The goal, after all, isn't to avoid AI. The goal is to be deliberate about how we use it. David Marquet commanded the USS Santa Fe, a nuclear submarine that was, when he took over, the worst performing vessel in the entire US Navy fleet. The crew had been trained in a single mode. Wait for orders, execute them. Don't think, don't question, do what you're told. And the result was a crew that couldn't function without being told what to do next. Even worse, Marquet had been trained for 12 months on a completely different type of submarine and had to learn the USS Santa Fe in a matter of weeks. Marquet's insight was this: the problem wasn't the crew, the problem was the system they'd been built into. They'd been trained to be self-automators. His solution wasn't to become better at giving orders, it was to stop being the only one that could give orders at all. He pushed authority to where the information lived. He moved his crew from asking, what should I do or can I do, and started expecting his crew to say, here's what I intend to do. Not permission, but intent. A subtle shift in language, but a profound shift in ownership. But, and this is the part that often gets overlooked, he only did that after investing heavily in building his crew's competence. Empowerment without competence, he found, is just plain chaos. You have to earn the right to make the call, and you earn it by building the foundation first. This is exactly the model SCOMathon runs on. The experts today are not Marquet standing in front of the ship issuing commands. They are Marquet investing in his crew, building competence, building the knowledge that enables others to make the right call themselves with confidence when it matters. And SCOMathon is also about building a community of leaders, not followers. Not people wanting to be told what the AI says to do, but individuals and teams who can direct the tool, evaluate the answer, make the call, make the correct call. Centaurs, not self-automators. And that's what SCOMathon is cultivating, the ability to form a hypothesis, to ask the right question, so that when the answer comes back, you know whether to trust it. So, 25 years ago, a product shipped, a little late, with a slightly confusing name that became the answer this community had been waiting for. The people who kept it alive, who built management packs, traced alerts at 2 a.m. and showed up the next year to share what they'd learnt, are people who built knowledge and understanding through experience, who didn't skip the foundation, who became centaurs, not cargo cult engineers. Which brings me to the charity we're supporting for SCOMathon 2026. I want to mention something that I think speaks directly to everything we've been talking about today. SCOMathon is proud to be sponsoring the Turing Trust at this event. The Trust was founded by Alan Turing's own family, and if anyone understood that the right foundation changes everything, it was Turing. Their mission is simple and profound. Get refurbished computers into the hands of children who don't have them. Not as a luxury, but as a foundation. Because without access to the tools, you can't even begin to build knowledge and experience. They've reached over 350,000 students across more than 790 schools worldwide. And every single one of those students now has a starting point they didn't have before. And between us, we're donating $4 to the Turing Trust for every attendee at each session attended today. So this is the one time I will actively encourage you to be selfish about your learning. Attend every session you can. Your curiosity directly funds a child's future. And finally, before I finish, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsors who make today possible. Gritmatics, NICE, TopCore and Squared Up. I don't say that as formality. I say it because everything I've talked about today shapes what these organisations build and how they show up for this community. They're not here to hand you answers and walk away. They're here to help you ask better questions. Because the goal of good tooling should never be to replace the engineer. It should make the engineer more powerful. Tools shouldn't be a crutch nor an oracle. Tools should be a window, one that gives you the visibility to see your environment clearly enough to bring your own expertise to bear on it. Marquet didn't move information up to the decision maker. He moved decision making down to the people who had the information. The best tools in this ecosystem do the same. They surface the right information at the right moment to the right people and then get out of your way. The insight is still yours. The pattern recognition is still yours. The tools just helped you see more clearly. That's what centaurs need. And that's what the sponsors in this room, this virtual room, are building. So thank you for listening to the keynote. SCOMathon 2026 is about to start.